What if I told you there's a life hack, just 2 lines long, that was spoken on a battlefield over 2000 years ago, and it could dissolve the anxiety that's been sitting on your chest for months? Here's the strange part. The reason it works is the exact opposite of everything you've ever been taught about success. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why the hardest worker in the room, the one who wants it the most, almost never wins, and what actually happens when you finally stop chasing the one thing you think you need. But first, let me ask you something. You've been working hard, maybe harder than anyone around you. You've got the plans, the schedules, the discipline, but there's this thing that happens every single time you sit down to do the work. Your mind jumps, not to the task in front of you, but to the outcome, the grade, the promotion, the approval, the number on the screen. And the harder you try to focus, the louder that voice gets. What if it doesn't work out? What if all of this is for nothing? You're not lazy, that's not the problem. The problem is, you can't stop caring about the result long enough to actually do the work. And so the work suffers. And because the work suffers, the results get worse. And because the results get worse, you care about them even more. It's a trap, and you've been living inside it, maybe for weeks, maybe for years. Let me tell you about a girl named Meera. Meera was 23. Final year of college, brilliant, the kind of student who used to read textbooks for fun in high school. But somewhere along the way, that changed. By her final year, Meera didn't read anything for fun anymore. She studied to survive. Her days were mapped out in 30-minute blocks, color-coded schedules, timed practice tests, 5 hours of sleep, repeat. She wasn't studying her subject anymore. She was studying the exam. Every paragraph she read, her mind would whisper, "Will this come in the paper?" Every concept she explored, a voice would interrupt, "Is this worth marks?" And the irony, the cruel irony, was this. The more she obsessed over the marks, the worse they got. Her mid-semester scores dropped, then dropped again. Her hands would shake before every test. Not because she didn't know the material, but because the weight of what the result meant had become unbearable. One evening, after a particularly brutal mock exam, Meera sat on the steps outside her college library, notes scattered around her, eyes red, and she said something out loud to no one. "I don't even remember why I chose this subject." That's when Professor Iyer sat down beside her. He was retired now, 72 years old. He still came to the campus library every Tuesday, not to teach, but to read. He'd been doing it for 11 years. He didn't say anything at first, just sat there. Then, after a long silence, he looked at her notes, the highlighted paragraphs, the margin scribbles, the frantic underlining, and he said something Meera would never forget. "Meera, when was the last time you were curious?" She looked at him. She didn't understand the question. He continued, "You're not studying, you're bargaining. You're saying to the universe, I'll put in this much effort and you give me this much result. That's not learning, that's a transaction." He leaned forward. "What if I told you, you have every right to sit here and study, every right to give yourself completely to this work. But the result, the mark on that paper, you have no right to that. You never did." Meera stared at him. "Then what's the point?" Professor Iyer smiled. "The point is that the moment you stop making the result the point, something extraordinary happens. You actually become capable of doing your finest work, not because you don't care, but because you're finally free enough to care about the right thing. He paused, then said gently, "There is an ancient teaching, thousands of years old, just 2 verses, and they say exactly this. Do your work with your whole heart, but release your grip on what comes after. Stand equal in success and failure." That balance, that steadiness of mind, that is the real skill of living. Now, hear the original Sanskrit. These are verses 47 and 48 from the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, perhaps the most quoted, most debated, most transformative words in all of Indian philosophy. Spoken by Krishna to Arjuna on the edge of the greatest battle ever fought. Karmanye vadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachan ma karma phalahetur bhurmate sangoastva karmani yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. Here is what these sacred words mean. You have the right to perform your action, but never to its fruits. Do not let the desire for results be your motive for action, and yet do not cling to inaction either. Established in inner balance, perform your actions, O Arjuna, abandoning all attachment. Remain equal in success and failure alike. This evenness of mind is what is called yoga. Krishna is not saying don't care. He is not saying don't try. He is saying something far more radical. Try with everything you have. Pour your entire soul into the work. But the moment you chain your peace to the outcome, you've already lost. Not because the outcome is unimportant, but because your obsession with it is the very thing standing between you and your finest work. Now consider the man who first heard these words, Arjuna, the greatest archer of his generation, a warrior who had trained his entire life for this single moment. And yet, there he stood between two massive armies, his legendary bow slipping from his hands, his body trembling. Not because he lacked skill, not because he lacked courage, but because his mind had raced ahead to the result. He saw the aftermath, the death, the grief, the destruction of everything he loved, and it paralyzed him completely. He wasn't afraid of the battle, he was afraid of what the battle would cost. The fruit of the action had become so enormous, so terrifying in his mind, that the action itself became impossible. Sound familiar? Meera couldn't study because every sentence was chained to a grade. Arjuna couldn't fight because every arrow was chained to a consequence. Different battlefield, same prison, the prison of outcomes. And Krishna's words were the key to that prison, not to stop caring, but to redirect that care. From the fruit, back to the work. From the scoreboard, back to the game. Meera didn't transform overnight. Let's be honest about that. But something shifted after that conversation on the library steps. The next morning, she didn't open her exam prep book. She opened her actual textbook, the one she hadn't touched in months. And she read, not to memorize, not to highlight what might come in the paper. She read because there was a paragraph about molecular behavior that she genuinely wanted to understand. Days passed. She stopped watching the clock. She stopped counting hours studied like currency she could trade for marks. She started asking questions in class again, not strategic questions designed to impress, but real ones, ones that came from honest curiosity, from not knowing and wanting to know. Her friends thought she'd given up. Her parents were worried. The color-coded study schedule sat untouched on her desk, gathering dust. 6 weeks later, the results came. Meera scored the highest she had in 2 years. But here's what matters, and I need you to hear this carefully. When she saw that result, she smiled. Not the desperate, relieved smile of someone who barely survived. The quiet smile of someone who had already received the real reward weeks ago, sitting in a library at 10 p.m., reading about molecules, completely lost in the wonder of understanding something for the very first time. The marks were a side effect. The work itself had been the gift all along. Now, let not show the momenteds of leader and let us state for thing. Now let's let the another shows, making but the new squirmus for billet of adjustment. Now let's keep to learn about the great in members contributor. Now let's never hurt heaven see. Now let unjusted fold her there on each let us state. Now let make sure the late haven't see. Now let me kuch padan now. Notice negative notance is clear her Shuddhan Kabani's mission up to Padanath. Now let's get to look at the moment with the never handly. Seek negative notance another clear her Shuddhan Kabani's mission up to Padanath. Notice negative notance is clear her Shuddhan Kabani's mission up to Padanath. Now let's negative place mission up to Padanath. Now let's skip to Padana. Notice negative notance is clear her Shuddhan Kabani's mission up to Padanath. Now let me place the Padan. Now let the justify her tehe. Sifar say now let the make sure the moment. Now let me be prevalent now. Let's keep to make sure the moment. Now let the achieving Kabani's mission Shuddhan Kabani's mission up to Padanath. Now let the Jeevan mission up to Padanath. Now let the achieving Kabani's mission Shuddhan Kabani's mission up to Padanath. Now let the build a mission Shuddhan Kabani's mission up to Padanath. Now let the little Sifar say. Now let the prevalent. Now let the little Sifar say. Now let the make sure the moment. Now let the Sifar say. Now let the prevalent another clear her Shuddhan Kabani's mission up to Padanath. Now let the built a mission another clear her Shuddhan Kabani's mission up to Padanath. Now let the make sure the moment. Now let the prevalent another clear her Shuddhan Kabani's mission up to Padanath. Now let the prevalent another clear her Shuddhan Kabani's mission up to Padanath. Now let the build a mission. Now let the clear her Shuddhan Kabani's mission up to Padanath. Now let me ask you, does any of this sound like your life? You set ambitious goals but feel strangely hollow the moment you achieve them. Every creative project you start gets strangled by the fear of how it will be judged. Resting feels impossible because somewhere deep down, your brain has tied your entire worth to your output. The joy you once felt doing your work has been quietly, almost invisibly, replaced by dread. Here is your Gita journal question for today. Think about the one thing you're working toward right now, the thing that keeps you up at night, and ask yourself this honestly. If you knew with absolute certainty that no one would ever see the result, would you still do it? And if the answer is no, what does that tell you about why you're really doing it? Write your reflection in the comments below. Be honest, this is between you and you. And remember this, the fruit was never yours to hold, but the work, the sacred, beautiful, irreplaceable act of pouring yourself into something fully, freely, without chains, that was always yours.